The stars stretched across the dark sky like endless fires, each one glowing with secrets of forgotten worlds. Ethan Cole, a lone human explorer, sat inside his small ship drifting near an unknown planet. His mission was simple: search, study, survive. But tonight something was different. He could not sleep. For 3 nights in a row, Ethan had heard whispers. They were not from his radio, not from his ship's computer. They came from inside his dreams. Faint voices, broken words echoing like someone calling through water. Help. Voice lost. Ethan woke with sweat on his forehead, his heart racing. He tried to shake it off, telling himself it was just stress, maybe space madness. But the whispers grew stronger each night until finally he decided he had to land. The planet below was covered in silver forests that shined in the moonlight. Rivers glowed faint blue like veins of light. Ethan guided his ship down and stepped into the alien world. The air was heavy, but he could breathe. Strange flowers turned toward him, opening like eyes. Then he saw her. A girl stood at the edge of the glowing trees. Her skin was pale, almost like glass, and her eyes shimmered with starlight. She watched him silently, as if she had been waiting. Ethan raised his hand to greet her. "Hello," he said carefully. The girl opened her mouth. No sound came. Only silence. Her lips trembled and tears filled her strange, bright eyes. She tried again, but nothing. Not a single word. Ethan felt a chill crawl up his spine. This was no ordinary alien. She was trying desperately to speak. Suddenly, a wave of dizziness hit him. Ethan clutched his throat. His voice, his words were gone. He opened his mouth to call out, but only silence poured out. The alien girl stepped closer. A light glowed between them, forming strange patterns in the air. Symbols floated like fireflies, shifting into a message his mind could somehow understand. One voice must be traded. One voice must be given. Ethan's heart pounded. Was this real? Or was the planet playing tricks on him? The girl's hands shook as she reached toward the light, her eyes pleading. He understood. She had no voice, and the only way she could speak was if he gave his own. Ethan thought about Earth, about his crew waiting for him. A voice was everything. A warning, a call for help, a laugh, a song. Could he really give that up? But then he looked at her. She was alone, her whole life locked in silence. She wanted only one chance to be heard. Ethan swallowed hard. His decision was heavy, but his heart knew the answer. Slowly he nodded. The light flared. Warm energy rushed into his chest, burning and cold at the same time. Ethan gasped, but no sound came out. His voice was gone. Forever. The girl's body shook as if the universe itself filled her lungs. She opened her mouth. For the first time, a sound broke the silence. "Thank you." It was his voice. The girl's words carried Ethan's tone, his breath, his soul. She had borrowed it, but she spoke with such care that it felt almost holy. She touched her throat, stunned by the sound. Then she looked at Ethan with shining eyes and whispered again, softer but stronger. "Thank you." Ethan smiled weakly. He wanted to answer, but silence chained him. He simply nodded. The girl wiped her tears and stood taller. But before either of them could say or think another word, the forest shifted. Strange shadows moved in the trees. A deep rumbling sound echoed across the ground. Figures appeared, tall and armored, their eyes glowing like red fire. Soldiers. They pointed at the girl, speaking in a language that shook the air. Though Ethan could not understand, he knew one thing. These soldiers were not here to welcome her. They feared her. A girl with a voice was not a blessing in this world. It was a threat. The girl grabbed Ethan's hand, her fingers cold but trembling with life. She used his voice again, whispering one word with fear and hope tangled together. "Run!" Ethan's chest tightened. His voice was gone. The girl now carried it. And together, in this alien world, they would face dangers he could not yet imagine. The silver forest grew darker, the soldiers closing in. Ethan's silent lips parted in shock and dread. The girl squeezed his hand harder. For the first time in her life, she could speak. And for the first time in his, Ethan could not, but somehow they both knew. Their story had only just begun. The silver forest was alive with echoes. Every branch seemed to whisper. Every root seemed to move. Ethan could not speak, but his mind screamed with questions. Why had he done it? Why had he given away his voice so easily? But when he looked at the alien girl beside him, fear melted into strange calm. She held his hand tightly, And though she used his voice now, the sound that escaped her lips carried something soft, something pure. "Run," she said again, this time stronger. Ethan obeyed. Together they dashed through the glowing woods, the girl leading the way. Behind them, armored soldiers shouted in thunderous tones. Weapons flashed, spraying beams of red light that burned through trees like fire. The ground trembled with each blast. Ethan stumbled, almost falling, but the girl pulled him up. Her grip was small, yet her strength came from something far greater: hope. They finally reached a hidden cave. Its entrance glowed with blue moss, and the air inside was cool and heavy with the scent of stone. The girl pressed her hand against the wall, and strange lines of light spread across the surface. The rock shifted, sealing them inside. For the first time since Ethan had lost his voice, silence returned. The girl turned to him, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark. She touched her throat as if to remind herself this miracle was real. Then with Ethan's voice she spoke, slowly, carefully, as though each word was a treasure. "My name is Lyra." Ethan's chest tightened. Hearing his own voice say someone else's name felt unnatural, yet it filled him with awe. He pointed to himself, raising his eyebrows in a silent question. Lyra smiled, catching his meaning. "Ethan," she said softly. "That is your name," he nodded. She had spoken his name into the world, a sound that carried weight, and somehow the cave itself seemed to hum with recognition. Lyra sat down on the stone floor, her body trembling. "My people. We were born without voices," she said slowly. "Long ago the stars punished us. Our ancestors broke a promise to the universe. Since then, silence is our curse." Her words echoed against the stone walls, words that should never have existed in her world. For her, speaking was more than survival. It was rebellion. Ethan listened, silent but not empty. He wanted to ask, why me? Why take my voice? But all he could do was gesture, point to his throat, then to her. Lyra lowered her gaze. "The trade was not mine to choose. The forest chose. It saw your kindness, your sacrifice." Her voice cracked with guilt. "I took your gift. And now you suffer." Ethan shook his head quickly. He touched his chest and smiled weakly, trying to show her it was worth it. His silence did not matter, her voice did. Lyra's eyes glistened. "You gave me life." Before either of them could say more, the cave trembled. The soldiers outside were trying to break through. Rocks rained from the ceiling. Lyra's expression shifted from fear to determination. She stood, her voice trembling but steady. "They will kill me," she whispered. "A girl who speaks is forbidden. They believe my voice will bring disaster." Ethan's fists clenched. He wanted to shout, to protect her with words. But his silence was unbreakable. Lyra stepped closer, placing her hand over his chest. "Do not fear. I will use your gift wisely." The wall cracked open with a loud rumble. The soldiers broke through, their glowing eyes filling the cave with crimson light. Weapons pointed at them. Lyra raised her chin. With Ethan's voice, she cried out, "Stop!" The word thundered through the cave, shaking the stone itself. The soldiers froze, stunned. No one had ever heard such a sound from one of their kind. Ethan stared wide-eyed. The power in her voice was more than human, more than alien. It carried energy, like the universe itself listened. One soldier shouted in rage and raised his weapon. But Lyra's hand shot out. "Ethan!" she called, her voice trembling with urgency. The ground split open. Strange blue light spiraled upward, wrapping around them like a shield. The soldier's weapon fired, but the energy beam shattered against the glowing barrier. The soldiers stepped back, terrified. They whispered among themselves, their fear growing with every second. To them, Lyra was no longer a girl. She was a living prophecy. Ethan grabbed Lyra's hand again. His silent eyes told her everything. They had to leave now. She nodded and spoke his thought aloud. "We run again." Together they slipped through a side tunnel, the forest opening wide ahead of them. The night sky burned with alien moons, but Ethan knew something had changed. This was not only about survival. Lyra's voice, his voice, was something far greater. It was a key, and keys always open doors. Her cages. As they disappeared into the glowing forest, Lyra whispered into the night, her words trembling but full of fire. "Thank you, Ethan. With your gift, I will not be silent ever again." The trees swayed as though listening. Somewhere deep within the planet, something ancient stirred, and Ethan, voiceless but unbroken, realized the truth. He had given up his voice. but in return, he had awakened a storm. The forest no longer felt safe. Every tree looked alive, every shadow stretched too long. Ethan and Lyra moved quickly through the glowing woods, their steps quiet but urgent. The night air was heavy, carrying the sound of soldiers hunting them. Lyra still held Ethan's hand. Her voice, his voice, was the only sound between them. Every time she spoke, Ethan felt his own soul echo in her words. "They will not stop," she whispered. "To them I am a crime. A voice is forbidden." Ethan only nodded, but inside his thoughts were burning. He wanted to tell her she was not a crime. She was hope. But silence wrapped around him like chains. They pushed deeper into the forest until the ground began to glow beneath their feet. Strange roots pulsed like living veins, carrying blue light into the earth. Lyra paused, her eyes wide. "This place," she whispered. "It is old. Older than my people." Before Ethan could react, the air shifted. A low hum rose from the ground and the glowing roots began to twist, forming patterns. Strange symbols appeared again, the same kind that had offered the voice trade. Ethan's skin tingled as the light wrapped around Lyra. She gasped and spoke his name aloud. "Ethan." The moment his name passed her lips, the entire forest shuddered. Trees bent as if bowing. The ground split open, revealing a massive stone figure rising from the earth. It was a guardian. The creature was taller than any building Ethan had ever seen, carved from black stone, its body glowing with cracks of molten blue, its eyes opened like burning suns. The forest went silent in fear. Ethan stumbled back, his throat tight. The guardian's gaze locked on Lyra, and its voice shook the world. "Who dares break the silence?" Lyra's body trembled. Her lips parted, but fear nearly silenced her again. She clutched Ethan's hand and drew strength from his presence. With his voice she spoke, her words echoing through the night. "I am Lyra. I have been given a gift." The guardian lowered its head, its massive stone face unreadable. No gift, a curse returned. The silence was the pact. Your kind swore never to speak again, to protect the stars, to atone for betrayal. Ethan frowned, unable to speak, but his mind screamed. Betrayal? A pact? What did it mean? Lyra stepped forward, her legs shaking but her voice strong. I did not choose silence. I was born into it. Why must we suffer for what was done long ago? The guardian's burning eyes flickered. Because words carry power. Words change fate. Your ancestors spoke greed and the universe punished them. Silence kept balance. Now, you break it. Ethan's heart pounded. He wanted to yell, to defend her, but his voice was gone. He could only tighten his grip on her hand, his silent strength telling her not to give up. Lyra raised her head. Then let the universe punish me, not my people. I will not be silent anymore, the guardian roared, the ground splitting beneath its feet. Trees crashed down. Rivers of light surged upward. Soldiers in the distance cried out, their hunt broken by the quake, and then the guardian moved. It lifted its massive arm, pointing directly at Lyra. If you speak again, your voice will awaken what sleeps below. The storm of silence will return. The world will burn. Ethan's chest tightened. He wanted to scream, don't listen. But he could only shake his head desperately. Lyra turned to him, her eyes full of fear and fire. Ethan, she whispered softly, using his voice like a promise. I cannot stop. I must be heard. The guardian's stone body groaned as it stepped closer. Its shadow swallowed them. The air grew hot, heavy with ancient anger. Ethan knew they could not fight it. Not yet. He tugged her arm, pointing toward the deeper forest. His eyes begged her, run. She nodded, reading his silence. We run, she said aloud, repeating his unspoken thought. Together they darted into the glowing woods. The guardian's roar followed, shaking the ground, tearing trees from their roots. Blue fire exploded behind them as the giant gave chase. The soldiers, once hunters, now fled in terror from the chaos. The guardian did not care for them. Its eyes were only on Lyra, the girl who broke silence. The chase was endless. Roots rose to block their path. Rivers burst open with boiling light. Ethan's lungs burned as he ran, but he refused to let go of Lyra's hand. At last they stumbled into a clearing. In the center stood a massive stone circle, half buried in the earth, glowing with strange symbols. Lyra froze, her eyes widening. This is, she whispered, the place of voices. The guardian's footsteps thundered closer. The circle pulsed, calling to Lyra like a heartbeat. Ethan pulled her toward it, trusting instinct. As they stepped inside, the symbols lit up, rising like fire around them. The Guardian halted at the edge, its molten eyes glaring. "You cannot hide," it growled. "The storm has already begun." The circle's light wrapped around Ethan and Lyra, forming a barrier. The Guardian raised its arm, but the barrier held. "For now." Lyra placed her hand on the stone, her voice trembling with Ethan's tone. "Ethan, I think this place remembers voices. All voices. Even yours." Ethan blinked, confused. He touched the stone too, and for a moment he felt something, like echoes of countless words trapped in the rock. Voices of the past. Lyra closed her eyes. "Maybe. We can find the truth here." Outside, the Guardian roared again, shaking the forest to its roots. Soldiers screamed and scattered like insects. Ethan looked at Lyra, his silent lips pressing tight. He didn't know what truth they would find, but he knew one thing. This was only the beginning of their hunt, and the hunter was not the soldiers. Not even the Guardian. It was something far older, something that had been waiting in silence for a voice to return. The stone circle pulsed with strange light, wrapping Ethan and Lyra in its glow. Outside, the Guardian raged, but its massive fists could not break through the barrier. Each strike shook the air, yet the circle held firm like a shield made of forgotten promises. Ethan stood inside, his chest heaving. His silence felt heavier than ever. He wanted to shout, to demand answers, but only emptiness left his lips. Lyra touched the glowing stone with trembling fingers. The symbols shifted under her hand, glowing brighter each time she spoke. "This place remembers," she whispered, his voice echoing through the air. "It holds the story of the curse." The ground beneath them shook. Images began to form on the circle's walls. Ghostly figures appeared, shadows of the past. Ethan's eyes widened as he saw what no human had ever seen before. An ancient people, tall and radiant, filled the vision. They looked like Lyra's kind, but prouder, stronger. Their voices thundered across the skies. They built cities of light, towers that touched the stars. With their voices they shaped stone, tamed fire, even moved the heavens themselves. But then the vision darkened. He saw greed in their eyes. Words twisted into weapons. Their voices, once gifts, became curses. Wars broke out. Towers fell. Worlds burned, and then a voice, deep and endless, shook the stars themselves. A voice not human, not alien, but the voice of the universe. "You who betrayed the gift, be silent. Let silence be your chains. Let silence be your punishment." The radiant people clutched their throats, their voices ripped away. The vision ended with cities falling quiet, a whole world trapped in eternal silence. Ethan's heart pounded. Now he understood. Lyra's people had once ruled with words, but their power destroyed them. Silence was their prison. Silence was their penance. Lyra's body shook as she fell to her knees. Tears streamed down her face. We are children of betrayal," she whispered. "Our voices cursed the stars. That is why we were born voiceless. That is why they fear me." Ethan knelt beside her, his silent eyes burning with protest. He grabbed her hands firmly, shaking his head. She was not betrayal. She was not curse. She was life. Lyra looked at him, trembling. "You gave me your voice. Do you understand what that means, Ethan? The universe will see you as guilty, too. It will not forgive you." Before Ethan could react, the barrier around the circle began to crack. The Guardian outside roared again, forcing its way closer. The symbols on the stone flickered, as though even this sacred place could not withstand such fury. Lyra turned back to the glowing wall. She placed her hands against it and cried out, "Tell me, how do we break this curse?" Her words rippled like thunder, and suddenly the circle answered. A single phrase appeared in the light, written in the ancient language. Ethan could not read it, but Lyra's eyes widened as the meaning burned into her mind. "One voice given in love may heal. One voice taken in greed may destroy." Lyra gasped, whispering the translation aloud. "Your sacrifice. It was love. That is why I can speak. But if another voice is stolen, it will bring only ruin." Ethan felt the weight of those words. His gift had not been curse, it had been choice. Love had changed the rules. But before hope could grow, the Guardian's molten eyes appeared through the cracks in the barrier. Its voice shook the ground. "You cannot run forever. Return to silence, or all will burn." The circle shattered. Light burst outward as the Guardian stepped inside, towering above them. Its massive hand reached down, ready to crush Lyra. Ethan jumped in front of her without hesitation, raising his arms though he had no weapon, no words. His silence screamed louder than any voice. The Guardian hesitated. Its burning gaze fell on him. You, a human. Why do you protect the cursed? Ethan's lips moved, but no sound came. Still, his eyes told the truth. Lyra rose to her feet, her body trembling but her voice firm. She shouted with Ethan's voice, her words echoing like thunder. But then the largest ship descended. It was a mountain of metal, its core burning with crimson fire. Its voice cut through the air, deep and mechanical, speaking in every mind at once. The curse cannot be broken. The silence will return. The voice must die, Lyra gasped, clutching her throat. Ethan staggered forward, rage in his eyes. He wanted to scream back, but nothing came. The massive ship's weapon began to charge, a sphere of burning red light growing larger than the city itself. The council fell to their knees. We are doomed, they whispered in thought. But Lyra's body shook with defiance. She turned to Ethan, her voice breaking with tears. If I speak again, it may kill you. I cannot lose you. Ethan's weak hands grabbed hers, pressing them to his chest. His lips moved silently, but she knew what he meant. You must, or all is lost. Lyra's tears fell onto his hands. She kissed his forehead gently, then turned to face the burning sky. Her voice rose, shaking the heavens. We are not curse. We are not silence. We are alive. The energy ripped through the city, powering every tower, every weapon. Silver light shot upward, striking the crimson sphere. The air screamed as the two forces clashed, shaking the world itself. Ethan collapsed to the floor, his body trembling. His life poured into her voice, thread by thread, heartbeat by heartbeat. Lyra screamed again, her throat burning. We will not be erased. The light grew unbearable. The enemy's crimson fire cracked, splintering under the weight of her words. But as victory neared, Ethan's chest fell still. His breath faltered. His hand slipped from hers. Lyra's heart broke. She turned, her voice shaking with desperation. Ethan, no, don't leave me. Her cry shook the air more than any weapon. The red fire shattered completely, the great ship torn apart in a blinding explosion. The fleet scattered, broken, the city was saved. The war was won. But Ethan lay silent, his body motionless. Lyra dropped to her knees, clutching him. Please, please, she whispered, but her voice cracked into sobs. For the first time, the sound of her words felt like a curse, not a gift. Around them, her people stood in silence. They had heard her. They had seen her. They were free. But Lyra felt only despair. She pressed her forehead to his, whispering with the last of his voice. If you die, I will give it back. I will return your gift even if I lose everything. The night sky burned with falling ships. The city glowed with new light. But Lyra held Ethan close, knowing that freedom had cost more than she could bear. And in the silence after victory, a darker choice waited. The war was over. The alien fleet lay in ruins, burning ships falling across the night sky like broken stars. The silent city still stood, cracked and scarred, but alive. For the first time in centuries, Lyra's people had hope. But Lyra did not feel hope. She only felt grief. She knelt on the stone floor, holding Ethan's still body against her. His skin was pale, his chest weak, his breath almost gone. Every word she had spoken with his voice had drained him, thread by thread, until nothing was left. Her tears fell onto his face. Ethan, please, she whispered in his own voice, trembling. Do not leave me. You gave me everything. I cannot lose you now. But Ethan's eyes stayed closed. His silence was deeper than before. The council gathered around, their glowing eyes watching. Their thoughts echoed in the air. The war is won, but the price is death. The human's voice is gone. His life is finished. Lyra shook her head violently. No, I will not let silence take him. If he gave me his voice in love, then I will give it back the same way. The council stared in shock. You would return it? To be silent forever? Yes, Lyra said firmly, her body shaking but her voice strong. Better my silence than his death. Better my chains than his grave. She placed her hand on Ethan's chest, her tears falling faster. She closed her eyes, summoning the light of the trade once again. The glowing patterns appeared, swirling in the air. The choice came back. One voice must be given. One voice must be returned. Lyra took a trembling breath. With Ethan's voice, she whispered her last words. Thank you, Ethan, for giving me life. The light flared. The warmth left her chest. The sound left her lips. Silence returned to her. And Ethan gasped. His chest rose sharply, his eyes flying open. His lips parted, and for the first time since that night in the forest, sound returned. Lyra, her name left his mouth, raw and weak but real. His own voice again. Lyra looked at him, tears streaming, but no sound came from her lips. She touched her throat, smiling softly through the pain. Her silence had returned, but she was not afraid of it anymore. Ethan sat up slowly, still weak but alive. He saw her, smiling silently at him, and his heart broke. She had given everything back, for him. He reached for her face, his voice trembling but strong enough. "You gave me more than words, Lyra. You gave me purpose. You gave me love." The council stepped back, whispering in their thoughts, shaken by what they had seen. A human and a cursed one. Breaking the law of silence and yet saving us all. The eldest finally lowered his head. Perhaps silence was never balance. Perhaps silence was only fear. Today you have shown us that even one voice given in love can change worlds. The city glowed brighter as though agreeing. The curse that had chained them for ages seemed lighter, less absolute. Lyra stood, her silent smile radiant. She touched Ethan's hand and pressed it to her heart. No words came, but Ethan understood. And for the first time, with his voice returned, he said the word that mattered most. Live. The single word carried through the hall. Simple yet powerful. It was not command. It was blessing. It was hope. Lyra's tears fell again, but her smile widened. Even without words, her heart spoke louder than ever. Days passed. The ruins of the fleet were cleared, the city rebuilt. Lyra's people began to change. Though still voiceless, they no longer feared silence. They no longer saw it as punishment. They had witnessed one girl who dared to speak, and a human who gave everything for her. Ethan's voice returned fully, though weaker than before. He spoke for Lyra when needed, but often he found he didn't have to. Her eyes, her hands, her smile said everything words could not. One evening under the glowing moons, they stood together on the balcony overlooking the reborn city. Ethan broke the silence softly. "When you spoke my name for the first time, it woke something inside me. And when you said thank you, it gave me more than life. It gave me meaning." Lyra looked at him, silent tears shining in her eyes. She pressed her hand to his chest where his voice lived and mouthed two words without sound. "Thank you." Ethan smiled, his voice gentle but steady. "No, Lyra, thank you." And together they stood, human and alien, silence and voice, bound not by chains but by choice. The curse of silence had been born from greed and betrayal. But its end came from love and sacrifice. One voice had been traded. One voice had been returned. And in that exchange, a whole world had changed forever. Because he gave me his voice. Because he chose hope over fear. Because silence is not life. Silence is death. The Guardian staggered back as though struck by her words. Its molten cracks flickered, unstable. Lyra stepped forward, raising her chin. "You call silence a pact, but it is only chains. I will break them, even if it destroys me." Her words exploded through the circle, shaking the air like a storm. For the first time, the Guardian faltered. Its body cracked wider, pieces of stone falling away. But with every word she spoke, Ethan felt weaker. His chest ached, his throat burned. His sacrifice was not endless. Each time Lyra used his voice, it drained him. Lyra noticed. She turned, her face pale with guilt. "Ethan, your life." Ethan forced a smile, shaking his head. He lifted his hand, pointing forward, urging her not to stop. His silence was his answer. "Use it. Speak. Be free." The Guardian roared again, raising its arms for one last strike. Lyra's eyes filled with fire. She took Ethan's hand, holding it tight, and with all her strength she cried out with his voice. "We are not silence. We are alive." The words tore through the night like lightning. The Guardian shattered into 1,000 burning fragments, its roar fading into silence. The forest trembled, then grew still. Ethan collapsed to his knees, his body shaking with exhaustion. Lyra dropped beside him, her hands clutching his. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "Every time I speak, I feel your pain," she whispered. "I cannot let you die for me. I cannot." Ethan's silent gaze met hers. His weak smile said the words he could not. It was worth it. But deep in the forest, the pieces of the Guardian glowed. The curse was not broken. Something darker had been awakened. The hunt was not over. It had only just begun. The forest lay in ruins. The Guardian's broken body smoked, its shattered pieces glowing faintly in the soil. But Ethan and Lyra knew this was not victory. It was only silence before another storm. They moved cautiously through the trees, following the glowing rivers until the land opened into a valley. There, beyond sharp cliffs and towers of stone, a vast city stretched across the horizon. Ethan stopped, staring in awe. The alien city shone with silver spires, its streets carved into perfect patterns. Thousands of lights flickered like stars trapped in glass. It was beautiful, but the silence was heavy. No laughter, no voices, only the sound of wind. Lyra's face tightened. "The council is here," she whispered in Ethan's voice. "They rule my people. They will decide my fate." Ethan frowned. If the council feared her voice, would they not kill her? He reached for her arm, shaking his head, but Lyra only looked at him with quiet resolve. "I must face them. If I run forever, my people will never be free." Ethan clenched his fists. He wanted to argue, but silence bound him. His only choice was to walk beside her. Inside the city, the streets were lined with watchers. Pale figures, voiceless like Lyra, turned to stare. Their wide eyes were filled with both awe and fear. For them, sound was unnatural. And yet, here was a girl who dared to speak. Lyra's steps echoed against the stone floor as they entered the great hall. The council sat upon high thrones, 6 figures cloaked in silver robes. Their eyes glowed faintly, ancient and cold. The eldest counselor leaned forward, his lips unmoving. His words came not as sound, but as thoughts pressed into the mind. "Lyra, you break the sacred law. You bring danger to us all. Voices destroy worlds. You cannot be allowed to live." Lyra's body trembled, but she stood tall. With Ethan's voice, she answered, "I did not steal this gift. It was given. By him." She gestured to Ethan, standing silently at her side. "He gave me his voice. He gave me choice." A ripple of shock moved through the council chamber. Murmurs of thought filled the air. The eldest's eyes narrowed. "A human gave his voice? Why?" Lyra looked at Ethan, her eyes full of quiet fire. "Because he saw me not as curse, but as life. He chose hope." The council's silence grew heavier, like chains pressing on the room. Finally, another counselor spoke, his mental voice sharp. "Then the human is tainted. He carries our curse now. His life will fade." Ethan's chest tightened. He already felt the drain each time Lyra spoke. The council's words cut deep because they were true. Lyra stepped forward, her voice rising with anger. "Then punish me, not him. He gave freely. That is not curse, that is love." The counselors recoiled as though struck. The word love burned them. To beings who lived in silence, love spoken aloud was dangerous. Before they could answer, the chamber shook. The ground trembled, lights flickered. Outside, alarms rang, strange, deep horns that made the air vibrate. The council turned their glowing eyes toward the sky. Through the great hall's windows, Ethan saw it. Dark shapes descending from the clouds. A fleet. Dozens of massive ships blotted out the moons, their weapons glowing with crimson light. The council's thoughts turned to panic. "The enemy returns! They have come for the voice." Lyra's eyes widened. "They come for me." Ethan's stomach dropped. An entire fleet armed for war was here because Lyra had spoken a single word. His sacrifice had unleashed something much larger than either of them understood. The council stood, their thoughts filling the chamber like thunder. The prophecy is true. A voice will bring either freedom or fire. Lyra grabbed Ethan's hand, her body trembling. But instead of fear, determination filled her. She turned to the council and shouted, her words shaking the great hall. "Then let it be freedom." The walls trembled. The spires outside flickered with light. Her words carried power, awakening machines buried beneath the city. Ethan's eyes widened as ancient weapons rose from the ground, towers glowing with forgotten energy. But every word she spoke drained him. Ethan stumbled, his body weak, his lips pale. Lyra caught him, tears in her eyes. "I'm killing you," she whispered. Ethan shook his head, forcing a smile. His silence was his answer. "Keep going." The council debated in frantic thoughts torn between fear and survival. Finally, the eldest turned his gaze on Lyra. "If you can lead us, if your voice can save us from the fleet, then speak. But if you fail, both you and the human will be erased." Lyra's hands shook, but she lifted her chin. She stepped into the center of the hall, her voice ringing out with Ethan's tone. "My people, hear me." The sound burst across the city, carried through the streets like fire. For the first time in centuries, the voiceless heard words, "You are not curse. You are not chains. We are more than silence. We are alive." The city roared, not with sound, but with light. Thousands of eyes glowed brighter. Buildings shuddered, machines woke from slumber. The fleet above the skies faltered, sensing the storm below. But Ethan collapsed to his knees. His vision blurred. Each word from Lyra drained the life from him. Lyra caught him, holding him close. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "Your gift is killing you. I cannot let you die." Ethan's weak eyes met hers. His silence spoke louder than any word. "If my death gives you life, it is worth it." Outside, the enemy fleet charged their weapons. The war had begun, and in the heart of the city, with his voice burning her throat, Lyra stood ready to fight. The alien city shone with new fire. Towers that had slept for centuries now blazed with light, powered by Lyra's words. For the first time in living memory, her people looked up not with fear but with hope. Above, the enemy fleet moved like shadows across the moons. Their ships were vast black metal that glowed with crimson veins. Weapons turned downward, aimed at the city of silence that dared to awaken. Ethan stood weak in the great hall, his breath shallow. Every time Lyra spoke with his voice, his strength drained away. But he refused to let go. His eyes burned with the same message he had carried since the moment he made his choice. Speak, keep speaking. Lyra knelt beside him, tears trembling in her eyes. "If I go on, I will lose you." Her words, spoken with his tone, broke her heart. "Your life is fading." Ethan smiled faintly. He reached up, touching her cheek with a trembling hand. His silence was heavy, but his eyes told her everything. "My life was given to you. Use it." Before Lyra could answer, the ground shook as the first enemy strike hit the city's shield. Silver walls cracked. Ancient towers groaned. The council cried out in silent panic. The eldest counselor's glowing eyes turned to Lyra. "If you have power, use it. Speak for us. Lead us." Lyra rose to her feet. Her body trembled, but her voice rang strong. "Then hear me. We will not bow to fear. We will fight," the city answered. Energy rippled through the streets as long-buried weapons lifted into the sky. Silver beams of light fired upward, striking at the crimson ships. The sky burned with war. Ethan pushed himself up, leaning against a pillar. His body was weak, but his heart pounded with pride as he watched her. Lyra had become more than a girl with a voice. She had become a leader. But every time she shouted, his chest ached deeper. His silence was no longer just absence. It was pain. The battle raged above. Enemy ships crashed into the towers, fire raining from the sky. Screams filled the silent city. Not voices, but the cries of thought, the fear of minds breaking. Lyra stood on the balcony, her hair whipping in the storm, her voice echoing across the city. "Stand strong. This is our chance. Do not fear silence. Do not fear death. Fear only never being heard." Her people raised their glowing hands, channeling the city's power into beams of light. The fleet shook as explosions ripped across the sky.